Continuous lesson 4.1.3. At this time, we're going to start subtracting mixed numbers using summary grouping. Here is our steps for our foldable. We're going to be changing them to improper fractions as one of our steps. But remember, we have to have a common denominator too. Then the steps are the same as they are for just subtracting fractions. Multiply to find a common numerator and denominator, subtract the numerators, keep the denominator, and simplify if possible. The key, remember, is don't forget about the whole numbers. So my example is 3 4/9 minus 1 5/6. I know that the common denominator of 9 and 6 is 18. So I'm going to rewrite them with that common denominator. 3 4/9 becomes 3 8/18. And 1 5/6 becomes 1 15/18. Remember, whatever I multiply the denominator by, I must multiply the numerator by. Gen change to improper fractions. Well, 3 8/18 becomes 62/18. Remember, it's the side times the bottom plus the top, or the whole number times the denominator plus the numerator. And 1 15/18 becomes 33/18. When I subtract my numerators, I get 29. So 29/18 can be simplified by saying how many groups of 18 can come out of 29? The answer is 1, and you have 11 left over. So your answer is 1 11/18. Here, let's look at some more. Suppose a piece of wood is 6 7/8 inches long is cut from a 36 1/2 inch board. How much of the board is left? Well, let's go ahead and set up our problem. I'm going to switch pages just so I have more room. Here is my problem, 36 1/2 minus 6 7/8. First, let's find our common denominator. Well, we know 2 is a factor of 8, so that can be our common denominator. So let's go ahead and rewrite these. 36, do not forget that whole number with a denominator of 8. And 6 7/8 can just come along because it already has a denominator of 8. What did I do to 2 to get to 8? I multiplied by 4. I need to do the same thing to the top. 1 times 4 is 4. Now let's change to the improper fractions. 36 times 8 plus 4 gives me 292. Denominator still 8. Minus 6 times 8 plus 7 gives me 55. Denominator again is still 8. When I subtract 292 minus 55, I get 237. Denominator stays the same. Now I have to determine how many groups I can take out. Well, that is a large number, so maybe I need to set up my division problem. Remember, it's top divided by bottom to see how many whole groups I'm going to have. Well, 8 goes into 23 twice. That's 16. Subtract. 23 minus 16 is 7. Bring down the other 7. 8 goes into 77 9 times. 8 times 9 is 72. And I have 5 left over. That means that 237 divided by 8 is 29 with a remainder of 5/8. Let's go back to another one. Juan has a piece of blue ribbon 6 1/2 feet long. She cuts off a piece 3 3/4 in length. How much of the ribbon is left? Again, let's set this up. I'm going to switch pages for more space. 6 1/2 minus 3 3/4. First, let's find our common denominator. Well, 2 is a factor of 4, so 4 can be their common denominator. So 6, bring down that whole number, minus 3 3/4. Again, what did you do to 2 to get to 4? I multiplied by 2. Do the same thing to the top. Now, we have to do subtraction. Well, we can't take 3 away from 2, so we're going to change them to improper fractions. 6 times 4 plus 2 is 26/4, minus 3 times 4 plus 3 is 15/4. Subtract your numerators. 26 minus 15 is 9, so I have 9/4. Now simplify. How many groups of 4 can you take out of 9? The answer is 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 9 minus 8 is 1 left over. So I have 2 1/4. One last one. Juan has the length of a green ribbon that is 3 2/3 yards long. Suppose she cuts off a piece 1 3/4 yards long. How many yards of ribbon will be remaining? Again, I'm switching pages to set up, but you can just set it up right underneath. 3 2/3 minus 1 3/4. Let's find a common denominator. Well, what would the common denominator of 3 and 4 be? If you can't see it, just multiply them. And 3 and 4, it is 12. So 12 is our common denominator. Remember, don't forget to bring down those whole numbers. Now, what did you do to 3 to get to 12? You multiplied by 4. Do the same thing to the top. 2 times 4 is 8. What did I multiply 4 by to get to 12? I multiplied by 3. Do the same thing to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Now let's change them to improper fractions. 3 times 12 is 36, plus 8 is 44. So 44 over 12 minus 1 times 12 is 12, plus 9 is 21. 21 over 12. Now subtract. 44 minus 21 is 23 out of 12. This is an improper fraction, so I need to change it to a mixed number. How many groups of 12 can I take out of 23? The answer is 1. 23 minus 12 is 11, so I have 11 left over. I have 11 twelfths. Those are the 3 problems. Now here's a cartoon of them showing 2 different ways. One of them used the changing to improper. Another student is using what we call borrowing. We're going to look at some of those examples soon, and then we'll come back to fill out that think and discuss. So let's look at this one. Miguel's brother Carlos is 69.5 inches tall. Last year, Carlos was 63 3/4 inches. How much did he grow in a year? Well, let's go ahead and set this up. 69 1/2 inch minus 63 3/4 inch. Again, let's get our common denominator. Well, 2 is a factor of 4, so I can use 4 as my common denominator. Let's make sure we bring down those whole numbers and set this up. Well, 2 times 2 gave me 4, so 1 times 2 is 2. 3/4 was already there, so I can just leave it like it is. Now, we have to change them to improper fractions. So, 69 times 4 plus 2 is 278 over 4, keep that same denominator, minus 63 times 4 plus 3 is 255 over 4. Subtract your numerators, keep your denominator. Well, 278 minus 255 is 23 over 4. Again, ask yourself, how many groups of 4 can I take out of 23? The answer is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 23 minus 20 is 3. So I have 3 left over, 3/4. Let's look at a couple of other ones. Now I'm going to show you some of the borrowing. Here is an example of improper, and then I'll do an example of borrowing. You can determine which ones you like best. So the first one is 3 7/8 minus 2 1/4. First, let's set it up with our common denominator. Well, since 4 is a factor of 8, 8 can be our common denominator. So 3 7/8 minus 2 with a denominator of 8. Well, I multiplied 4 by 2 to get to 8. I must do that for the numerator. 1 times 2 is 2. Now let's change them to improper fractions. Well, 3 times 8 is 24 plus 7 is 31 over 8 minus 2 times 8 is 16 plus 2 is 18. Remember, it's the side times the bottom plus the top. Now let's subtract. 31 minus 18 is 13. Keeping that same denominator. How many groups of 8 can I take out of 13? The answer is 1. 13 minus 8 is 5, so I have 5/8 left over. Let's look at number 9. 9, I'm going to do what they call borrowing. So I have 6 1/3 minus 5 3/4. Again, I still have to find a common denominator. So common denominator of 3 and 4 is 12. So I have 6 with a denominator of 12 minus the whole number 5 with a denominator of 12. Start the same way. What did you do to 3 to get to 12? I multiplied by 4. 1 times 4 is 4. What did I do to 4 to get to 12? I multiplied by 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Now you can see that you can't subtract 9 from 4, so I have to borrow. I'm going to borrow 1 whole from the 6. So that 6 is going to become a 5. Remember, if I'm borrowing a whole, 12th, I'm really borrowing 12 over 12. So remember, that's the part we're borrowing. So I have to add those numerators together. So 12 plus 4 gave me 16 over 12 minus 5 and 9/12. Now I can go ahead and do my subtraction. Subtract your whole numbers. Well, 5 minus 5 is just 0. We don't have to worry about that. And 16 minus 9 is 7. So I get 7 over 12 as my answer. These are two different ways to do it. You can prefer which way you want. I like changing the improper, but if you think borrowing is easier, give it a shot on the next one and come back and see if you get the same answer I got. Well, hopefully when you did this, you got the answer, and I'm going to write it right below here, of 8 and 19 over 20. If you didn't, go back and check your work and see if you can find where you made your mistakes. Here's a few more practice problems. Here I've given an example of each one. One with borrowing, one with changing to improper. Again, you get the same answer regardless of which one you use, but make sure you choose the one that's easiest for you. I'll do two more with you. 3 1/6 minus 1 3/5. Let's use improper fractions for this one, and I'm just going to abbreviate here. So the common denominator of 6 and 5 is 30. So I have 3 with a denominator of 30 minus 1 with a denominator of 30. Remember, do not forget the whole numbers. What did I do to 6 to get to 30? I multiplied by 5. 1 times 5 is 5. What did I do to 5 to get to 30? I multiplied by 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Now let's change them to improper fractions. 3 times 30 is 90 plus 5 is 95 over 30. Minus 1 times 30 is 30, plus 18 is 48 over 30. Now let's subtract. Subtract the numerators. 95 minus 48 is 47 over 30. Again, how many groups of 30 can I take out of 47? The answer is 1. And how many left over do I have? 17 out of 30 left. Now we can do one with borrowing. 5 3/7 minus 3 5/8. So this one will be borrowing. And again, I'll abbreviate. So now a common denominator would be 56. So I have 5 with a denominator of 56 minus my whole number 3 with a denominator of 56. Let's get the numerators. 7 times 8 gave me 56. 3 times 8 is 24. 8 times 7 gave me 56. 7 times 5 is 35. Now we have to borrow one whole. Remember, when I borrow a whole, I'm borrowing a whole with a fraction. So when I borrow from 5, I'm really borrowing 56 out of 56. I have to have that fraction. So I borrow from 5 becomes a 4. If I'm adding 56 to 24, I'm going to get 80 over 56. Subtracting now, I can subtract my 3 and 35 over 56. Subtract your whole numbers. Well, 4 minus 3 is 1. Subtract your numerators. 80 minus 35 is 45. Denominator stays the same, 56. Then see if you can simplify. In this case, I can't. So my answer stays 1 and 45 over 56. Right? Give the rest a shot and go ahead and try your homework.